The market on Station Karun was never quiet, not even at night. Voices in dozens of alien languages rose and fell, the air thick with the smell of hot oils and strange spices. Merchants shouted prices, customers argued, and somewhere in the background, a musician played a fast, sharp rhythm on a metal drum. But all that noise stopped the moment a tall human stepped through the gates. He walked with a soldier's stride, shoulders straight, eyes scanning the crowd like he was searching for something or someone. His clothes were dusty from travel, a worn leather jacket over a dark shirt, but his boots shone like they had been polished that morning. People watched him pass, some curious, others tense. Humans were rare here, and when they came, it was usually for trade or transport. This one didn't look like a trader. He stopped at a stall where a three-eyed vendor was arranging jars of glowing green fruit. The vendor glanced up, ready to offer a price, but the human's first words froze him in place. "Where can I find the Void Serpent?" The words were spoken clearly, without hesitation, loud enough for half the market to hear. It was like a ripple in water. Every alien within earshot turned their head. A pair of insectoid dockworkers dropped the crate they were carrying, its contents shattering on the ground. A tall creature with silver skin muttered something in its own language and backed away, vanishing into the crowd. Even the music stopped. The vendor's three eyes widened, and he quickly shook his head. "You should not say that name here," he whispered, leaning forward. "Not if you value your life." The human smiled, as if amused. "I asked a question. Where is it?" The vendor's voice dropped lower, so soft it was almost lost in the air. "No one knows. No one wants to. No. The Void Serpent does not leave survivors. Whole fleets vanish when it comes. Planets go dark. The old laws forbid even speaking of it." But the human didn't look away. "I'm not afraid of old laws," he said. "Humans have a score to settle." Whispers spread like fire. "Human is searching for the serpent." The crowd grew restless, some backing away, others staring openly. A security patrol drone hovered closer, scanning the man's face. Somewhere in the upper levels of the station, an alien officer received a silent alert, flagged with the word danger. The human introduced himself as Captain Rourke when a short, nervous alien named Vel tried to convince him to leave. Vel was a pilot for hire, and he had heard enough stories about the serpent to know they never ended well. "I don't know what you're chasing," Vel said, his voice trembling. "But the serpent isn't just a story to scare hatchlings. It's real. Ships vanish into its shadow. Even the Galactic Council doesn't go near the places it's been." Rourke listened without interrupting, then simply said, "Good. That means no one will be in my way." High above the market, hidden cameras recorded every movement. The footage streamed live to the private chamber of a council intelligence chief, a tall, scaled alien named Kether. Watching the human ignore the fear around him made Kether uneasy. He had dealt with humans before. They were stubborn, reckless, and sometimes terrifying, but none had ever spoken the name of the Void Serpent without trembling. This one didn't even blink. Kether ordered his agents to keep the man under watch and to alert the council immediately. "If the humans are looking for it," he said quietly, "the galaxy is already in danger." "Back in the market, Captain." Rourke bought a small map from the fruit vendor, not because he needed it, but because it made the vendor relax enough to stop staring at him in horror. Then he turned and walked toward the docking bays, his boots echoing on the metal floor. Every step seemed to carry the weight of something the others couldn't see. Behind him, the crowd slowly returned to its business, but the air still felt heavier, as if his question had left a shadow no one could shake. Somewhere far beyond the station, in a part of space where no stars shone, something ancient drifted in the dark. It had no eyes, yet it turned slowly, almost lazily toward a direction it had not faced in centuries. In the silence of the void, it began to move. The Galactic Council's high chamber was never quiet, but tonight the noise was different. It wasn't the usual mix of polite arguments and endless political speeches. It was fear-low voices, sharp tones, restless movement. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their curved seats, their eyes fixed on the large projection at the center of the room. It was a recording from Station Karun, grainy but clear enough to show a tall human in a leather jacket. Moment that mattered played on loop. the human stepping up to a market stall, asking in a calm voice, "Where can I find the void serpent?" Each time the words echoed through the chamber, the tension grew thicker. Council Speaker Varish, a long-necked alien with translucent skin, finally slammed a silver staff against the floor. "Pause the feed," she ordered. The image froze on the human's face, calm, confident, unafraid. "We all know what that question means," she said. "This human intends to find it. We cannot allow that to happen." A heavy-set reptilian. "Delegate from the Drath," Confederacy growled. "The Serpent is beyond control. It consumes fleets as if they are dust. If humans awaken it, the galaxy will burn." A smaller delegate, insect-like and twitching nervously, replied, "Awaken it? You speak as if it sleeps. It moves where it wishes, when it wishes, but it avoids populated worlds. What if the humans draw it in?" The debate spiraled into shouting. Old stories were told again, fleets disappearing into the black, cities gone without a single distress call, survivors driven mad by what they had seen. Everyone agreed on one thing: the void serpent was not to be approached. Yet here was a human who wanted exactly that. And worse, he looked like he had a plan. In the back of the chamber, Council Intelligence Chief Kether stepped forward. His scales shimmered under the pale lights as he spoke. "I've had my agents follow this Captain Rourke since he arrived. He is assembling a crew. A thief from the Denari Syndicate, a scientist stripped of her research license, and—" Kether paused, his yellow eyes narrowing. "A man with no records. No history, no identity, no past. That is unnatural." Several delegates exchanged uneasy looks. The speaker's voice was sharp. "And their purpose?" "They are searching for the Serpent's location," Kether said. "They are moving quickly. If we delay, they will leave council space." Silence fell for a moment. Then the Drek delegate spoke again, his deep voice slow and deliberate. "Then we do not delay. We end this before it begins." A vote was taken in seconds. The council would not send a fleet to obvious. Instead, they would put a silent bounty on Rourke's head. Hunters, mercenaries, and desperate criminals across the galaxy would hear the message: capture the human. Stop him at any cost. Far. From the council chamber, Captain Rourke sat in a dimly lit cantina on the edge of the station. The thief, a lean woman named Syrah, leaned back in her chair, flicking a coin between her fingers. "You know," she said casually, "I've heard more whispers in the last hour than I've heard in a year. It seems your little question made you famous." The scientist, Dr. Alara Vance, looked uneasy. "Famous is bad. Famous means people are watching. If the council is watching, they'll come for us." Rourke sipped his drink, eyes fixed on the window where the endless black of space stretched beyond. "Good," he said quietly. "Let them try." The silent man with them didn't speak, didn't move, just sat with his hands folded. But his eyes, faintly glowing in the dark, never stopped scanning the room. He seemed to be listening to things no one else could hear. Outside the cantina, a tall figure in a hood stood in the shadows, watching through the glass. A thin metallic device glinted on their wrist as they sent a coded message. Far away, in the underbelly of the station, the first bounty hunter received the signal. The hunt for the human had begun. And somewhere in the unlit edges of the galaxy, the void serpent kept moving, its vast body curling through the dark as if it already knew someone was coming. The dead zone was not on any official map, and there was a reason for that. No stars lit its endless black. No signals came out once you went in. Ships that entered either drifted back as empty shells or never returned at all. Most pilots avoided it, saying the silence there pressed on the mind until it drove you mad. Captain Rourke's ship, the Iron Wake, glided through that darkness now, its lights cutting thin lines in the void. Inside the cockpit, Syrah stared at the forward display, frowning. "This place feels wrong," she muttered, "like it's watching us." Dr. Alara sat at a terminal, her hands moving over the controls. "It's just the lack of signal feedback. Your brain wants sound, light, anything. Out here, it's nothing." Her voice was steady, but her eyes kept darting to the readings massive. Empty space, except for one faint blip ahead. The silent man stood behind Rourke's chair, unmoving, as if he had been carved from stone. Rourke glanced at him once but said nothing. He focused on the blip. "That's our target. The derelict research vessel, Veron, the last known ship to study the Void Serpent. When the Iron Wake reached it, the Veron floated like a corpse in the dark. Its hull was scarred, sections twisted as though something had crushed them. No lights, no life signs. Sierra hooked the ships together with magnetic clamps, while Rourke prepared the boarding gear. As they crossed into the Veron, their boots echoed too loudly in the empty corridors. The air was stale, tasting of rust and long decay. Papers and tools floated in the weak, artificial gravity. On one wall, a message had been scratched into the metal, ITCs. Ilara found the main lab, its equipment smashed, data drives torn from their mounts. But in a sealed locker, Rourke discovered something, a small sphere that lit up when he touched it. A projection bloomed in the air, showing a star map. Several systems were marked in red, and at the very edge of the map, an empty region pulsed with faint golden light. Ilara's breath caught. "That's the feeding grounds." Before they could study it further, a faint metallic clatter echoed from deeper in the ship. Sierra froze. "We're alone, right?"
Ow.
The sound came again, closer this time, heavy dragging steps. Out of the shadows stepped a towering figure in dented armor, its face hidden by a black visor. The air seemed to vibrate around it. The armored stranger said nothing, just lifted a weapon that looked older than any of them had seen. Before Rourke could react, the silent man moved. He crossed the room in a blur, slamming into the armored intruder with a force that dented the wall. The fight was brutal, and fast metal against metal, the deck shaking under the impact. Finally, the intruder was thrown into a bulkhead, collapsing with a broken hiss. The silent man turned back to the crew, his glowing eyes brighter now. For the first time, Rourke spoke directly to him. "We'll talk about that later. Right now, we've got what we came for." He pocketed the sphere. But as they headed back to the Iron Wake, none of them noticed the small red light on the Veron's hull begin to blink, a tracking beacon, now broadcasting their position to every hunter in the sector. Far away, in the cold darkness beyond any charted system, something enormous stirred. The feeding grounds were no longer quiet. The Iron Wake emerged from the dead zone into a stretch of space that felt just as wrong. No planets, no stars, only drifting shapes in the dark. At first glance, they looked like asteroids, but as the ship moved closer, the crew saw the truth. They were ships. Dozens of them, hundreds maybe, all broken. Some split clean in half. Others twisted into impossible shapes, as if something had gripped them and crushed them like toys. Hulls bore scorch marks, claw-like gashes, and strange burn patterns that didn't match any known weapon. Sierra's voice was barely above a whisper. "This is a graveyard." Dr. Ilara stared at her readings, frowning. Some of these wrecks are centuries old, others only weeks. Whatever did this still hunts here. Rourke sat forward in his chair, eyes fixed ahead. "The feeding grounds," he said quietly, as if naming the place might wake something. The silent man stood, as always watching the dark through the viewport. Its glowing eyes flicked once to Rourke, then back to the void. The Iron Wake drifted between the ruined vessels. Bits of metal floated lazily, spinning. It's a massive cruiser hung with its engines ripped out. An entire carrier had a hole clean through its center. The edges melted like candle wax. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Then the ship's sensors caught at something moving. Slow. Enormous. The screen showed only a shifting shadow. It was big enough to block out the wrecks behind it. Lara's hand trembled on the console. That's not a ship." The shadow curved, scales glinting faintly as it passed through a thin beam of light. A shape like no other, body stretching farther than the eye could follow. No engines, no sound. It moved as if the void itself carried it, and then it turned. Sierra's breath caught, looking at us. It had no eyes that they could see, but the pressure was there, like being pinned under an impossible. "Wait." Rourke's voice was low, almost a whisper. "It remembers me." Before anyone could ask what he meant, The serpent slid away into the dark, not fleeing, not attacking. It's just watching from a distance, keeping pace with them. Hilarious. Scanners beeped. Massive energy pulses ahead. It's feeding, or something close to it. The iron wake followed cautiously, weaving between wrecks until they reached the source. A shattered dreadnought floated in the dark, its reactor core glowing faintly. The serpent coiled around it, vast and silent, like a predator savoring its catch. The sight was hypnotic, till the ship's proximity alarm screamed. Multiple contacts. Not from the serpent, but from above and behind. Small ships dropping from stealth, closing in fast. Sarah cursed. Council bounty hunters.
House.
Rourke didn't move his gaze from the serpent. Hold position. Are you insane? They're going to Sierra's words cut off as the serpent shifted. Slowly, it uncoiled from the wreck and turned toward the incoming hunters. The hunters didn't fire. They stopped dead, as if caught in a trap they hadn't seen. Then, without warning, one of their ships vanished into the dark, swallowed in silence. Now no debris. No light, nothing. The rest broke formation in panic, scattering, firing wildly into the void. The serpent ignored most of them, gliding past like a shadow. Rourke finally spoke, calm and steady. It's letting us live. In the silence that followed, the serpent drifted closer. So close, its scales filled the viewport like black glass. Then it passed under the iron wake, disappearing into the dark ahead. Rourke leaned back in his seat, a faint smile on his face. It knows why I'm here. No one dared to ask the question hanging in the air. How could he possibly know that? And somewhere far behind them, the surviving bounty hunters sent out frantic messages. The human wasn't just chasing the serpent was allowing itself to be found. The iron wake floated in the quiet after the encounter, but no one on board felt calm. Dr. Alara kept staring at the sensor logs, replaying the serpent's movements. It could have destroyed us, she said softly. It didn't. Sierra shook. Her head, no, it didn't destroy us. But it killed those hunters like they were nothing, and you're acting like that's normal. Rourke sat at the head of the table in the ship's mess, the faint hum of the engines the only sound. His eyes were fixed on the map sphere they had taken from the Varen. The feeding grounds pulsed faintly in gold light. Finally, he spoke. It didn't attack because it knows me. Ilara frowned. Knows you. You've never been near this thing. Rourke leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. Not me. My bloodline. The Void Serpent isn't a random predator, it's a weapon, and humans made it. The words hung in the air like a dropped blade. Ilara stared at him. That's impossible. The serpent is older than most recorded civilizations. Older. Yes, Rourke said, but not from nature. Centuries ago, in the Old War, humans fought enemies the galaxy doesn't even remember anymore. They built living weapons creatures, made to hunt fleets, tear through worlds. The serpent was the greatest of them. Too great. It turned on its masters. The survivors locked it away in the void, erased all records. My family kept the truth. Hidden until now. Sierra narrowed her eyes. Why now? Rourke's gaze darkened. Because something else is coming. Something the serpent was made to fight. If we don't have it on our side, we lose. Before Alara could respond, alarms blared through the iron wake. Multiple warp signatures. A massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace ahead of them. Dozens of Council warships. Their weapons already locked on target. This is Commander Thales of the Galactic Council, a voice boomed over comms. Captain Rourke, power down your engines. You are charged with endangering the galaxy. You will surrender immediately. Sierra's hands hovered over the controls. We can't outrun that many ships. Rourke's eyes shifted to the silent man, who had risen from his seat, his faintly glowing eyes fixed on the viewport. We're not going to outrun them, Rourke said quietly. We're going to call the serpent. Before either woman could protest, Rourke stepped to the console and keyed in a sequence from memory. The sphere's map flared to life, sending out a deep low-frequency signal into the void. It It wasn't sounded, it was something older, something felt in the bones. The council ships closed in. "Last warning, Captain," the voice snapped. "Power down or be destroyed." Rourke didn't reply, just waited at first. Nothing happened. Then the darkness ahead shifted. A ripple, a shadow, a shape too large to comprehend. The void serpent emerged from the black, its vast coils sliding between the warships without touching them. The fleet hesitated, their tight formation breaking. Then the serpent's mouth opened, and space itself seemed to bend inward. The nearest cruiser was pulled forward, vanishing in an instant. Panic rippled through the council ships. Some fired, their weapons disappearing into the serpent's hide without effect. Others turned to flee. Rourke stood in the center of the bridge, his voice low. It remembers its purpose. The serpent coiled in the darkness, waiting for his command, and the council, for all its power, suddenly looked very, very small. The bridge of the Iron Wake shook as the serpent's coils slid past, each movement distorting the stars outside. The council fleet was in chaos, ships firing blindly, others trying to jump to safety. But the serpent moved faster than anything that size had a right to. It cut through their formation like a shadow tearing apart light. On the coms, Commander Thali's voice was no longer firm, and commanding it was strained, almost pleading. "Captain Rourke, stand down. You don't understand what you're—" His words cut off in static, as his flagship was swallowed whole. Vanishing without debris, Sierra gripped the control panel, staring in disbelief. "We're just letting it do this?" Rourke didn't answer. He stepped forward until he was standing. At the viewport, his gaze fixed on the serpent. It seemed to pause in the dark, turning slightly as if waiting for him. Rourke placed a hand on the console and spoke in a steady voice. "Enough." The serpent froze. Slowly, impossibly, it uncoiled, drifting back toward the empty stretch of space beyond the wreckage. The surviving council ships, their formations shattered. Didn't wait, they fled at full speed, leaving trails of light that vanished into the void. Dr. Alara's voice was low, almost a whisper. "You control it." Rourke turned toward her, his expression unreadable. "No, I can guide it. Control is an illusion when you're dealing with something like this. It remembers the command language of its creators, and it knows I am one of them." Sierra crossed her arms. "And now the council knows too. They won't stop hunting us." Rourke nodded. "They'll try, but they're not the ones I'm worried about." Before anyone could ask what he meant, the serpent shifted again, not toward the Iron Wake, but toward the black beyond. It lingered there for a moment as if listening. Then, with a movement that was almost wary, it slid deeper into the void. LRS scanners lit up. "I'm getting something. Huge energy signatures far beyond the feeding grounds, multiple sources, they're moving fast." Rourke's eyes darkened. "It's here." Sierra frowned. "What's here?" Rourke looked out into the black, his voice quiet but heavy. "The thing the serpent was made to fight. If it's moving now, the galaxy's in more danger than it's ever known." The silent man finally spoke for the first time, his voice deep and calm. "Then we must go to it." Rourke nodded once. "We will. But not alone." He tapped a sequence into the console. Somewhere far away, the void serpent answered with a low, bone-deep vibration that shook the hull. It circled once around the Iron Wake, then vanished into the dark ahead, leading the way. The Iron Wake followed. Behind them, the Council's fractured fleet tried to regroup, but their voices on the coms were filled with fear. They had witnessed something no one was meant to see: a human walking alongside the most feared creature in the galaxy. And out in the deep, beyond all charts, something vast and unfamiliar opened its eyes. The Iron Wake chased the serpent through the dark, its massive coils gliding effortlessly ahead. No stars lit the way, no charts marked this region. The only guide was the low, resonating hum the serpent sent out, a call that seemed to echo through space itself. Inside the bridge, no one spoke. Even Sarah, who could always find something sarcastic to say, stayed quiet. They could all feel it. The air was heavier, the silence sharper. Whatever they were heading toward was close. Dr. Alaris. Screens flashed with warning symbols she didn't recognize. "I'm reading distortions," The space ahead isn't stable. Something's tearing it apart. The silent man stepped forward, eyes glowing brighter than before. It's waking. The first sign was light-thin threads of crimson cutting. Across the black, they grew, twisting and splitting like cracks in glass. Through them, shapes began to emerge, massive and shifting, too strange for the eye to focus on. Even the serpent slowed, its vast body coiling in a slow, deliberate arc. Syrah's voice was barely a whisper. "What is that?" Rourke didn't answer right away. He just watched the shapes grow clearer along, jagged bodies, each bristling, with spines that shimmered like liquid metal. There were at least 4, maybe more, and each one was as large as the serpent. Maybe larger. Those, he finally said, are the enemy. The ones my ancestors built the serpent to destroy. The creatures moved with unnatural speed, crossing impossible distances in seconds. When they opened their maws, there was no glow, no fire, just a crushing emptiness that seemed to pull light itself inside. Ah! The serpent let out a deep, vibrating sound that rattled every surface of the iron wake. It wasn't fear. It was a challenge. The battle began without warning. The serpent lunged, coils wrapping around one of the spined beasts, crushing until its armor-like hide cracked. Another creature struck from above, slamming into the serpent's back, forcing it to release its prey. The void lit with the violent dance of monsters, their movements bending the very fabric of space. Rourke turned to his crew. "We're not just watching. Keelara. Feed targeting data to the serpent through the signal interface. Syrah, keep us in close, but out of their direct path. And you," he looked at the silent man, "do whatever it is you've been holding back." The silent man smiled faintly and vanished from the bridge. Moments later, the Iron Wake's hull flared with strange patterns, shielding it from the shockwaves tearing through space. Alara's hands flew over the controls, sending attack vectors and bursts of coded light. The serpent responded instantly, striking where the enemy's armor was weakest. One of the spined beasts screamed without sound, its body tearing apart. In a violent collapse, another tried to flee, but the serpent pursued, jaws closing over its head until nothing remained. The remaining creatures circled warily, their movements slowing. Then, without warning, they withdrew, sliding back through the crimson cracks, which began to fade as if they had never been there. The void was still again. The serpent drifted toward the Iron Wake, its immense head lowering until it filled. The viewport. Rourke stepped forward, meeting its gazor at the sense of one. "It's not over," he said quietly. "You know that. And so do I." The serpent gave one final low vibration before turning away, disappearing into the endless dark. Syrah leaned back in her chair, letting out a long breath. So, we just fought side by side with the most feared thing in the galaxy. What now? Rourke looked out into the void where the crimson cracks had been. Now we prepare. One day, they'll come back. And when they do, he glanced at the map sphere in his hand, its golden light pulsing like a heartbeat. The galaxy won't fear the serpent anymore. They'll thank it. Far beyond the reach of any scanner, deep in the black, the serpent swam alone. Somewhere unseen, in a place where space itself twisted like water, other shapes began to stir.